I've disassembled my Keihin carburetor because I want to make a few mods to it. The first one is regarding throttle cable slack. The throttle cable sits in this assembly, and I want to increase the slack slightly. The specification for throttle tube slack is between 3 and 5 millimeters. Right now I'm right on 3 millimeters, which is the minimum. So what I intend to do is to mill off the top of this piece by 2 millimeters, and that should give me 2 millimeters more slack, so I'll be able to adjust the throttle tube slack better. The second one is I want to adjust the float level, so I'm going to be taking the bowl off and adjust that. And the third one is the vent tubing. These tubes I want to take up, and the overflow tube I want to loop round, so I want to make that one longer. And I've got some new vent tubing, so I'm going to use that. So I've measured the top cover, and this piece sticks up approximately 2.5 millimeters. So milling off 2 millimeters is no problem at all. Also, I measured the internal thread, and there's almost 10 millimeters of internal thread. So even if I take 2 off, there's still 8 millimeters left. So there's still plenty of thread for the throttle cable to screw into. So that's not going to be an issue at all. So I've got the carburetor throttle holder mounted in the mill, and it's quite a tricky shape, but I managed to mount it in this V-block, which has some threaded holes, and using clamps it's nice and secure and flat in there. So I just milled 2 millimeters off the cap in this area, as you saw, and I'm going to test fit the throttle cable. And I'm thinking when I assemble this, I'm going to use a small amount of thread lock to stop any water getting down in there. Previously it had the raised section, and the throttle cable rubber boot would seal on that to stop water getting in, but now that section is not there. So I think a small amount of thread lock will be fine with that. And so it fits down nicely now, and that'll give me 2 millimeters more free play in the throttle tube, so I'll be able to adjust the play more in the middle of the specification rather than minimum now. Next I'm checking the float height. I've already removed the floats, and I've marked a reference 0 level flat with the base. And then up from that 7 millimeters is what I'm aiming for float height. Then to reassemble a float, you just place it on top carefully, and then there's a pin which slides through and holds the float in place. So you can just push it through with your fingers, and then confirm that it moves freely. So the float level is adjusted with the carburetor at 60 degrees to the bench, and I've set that up precisely using a spacer, and I checked it using a adjustable angle like this, when it's at 60 degrees, the float needs to be level with the line I marked, which is 7 millimeters. And as you can see, it's exactly right now. So I don't need to do any adjustments. If you did need to adjust the float level, you'd need to bend the tang in or out to adjust that level. Okay, so I've changed all the carburetor vent hoses to this orange silicone hosing. And the key changes I made were the overflow vent hose. Originally it just came straight down, and it can be prone to slopping fuel out while you're riding along. So I've looped it up and down, and that should prevent that from happening. And then the uppermost vent hoses, originally they crossed over and came down, and I'm going to have them running up underneath the tank and then pointing down. with the original ones, what can happen is in a deep water crossing, they can suck water up into the carburetor. So underneath the tank should be a lot better for that. And that's the part number for the vent hose if you want to buy the same thing. So here you can see the carburetor refitted, and the overflow vent I've looped up and over. And then the upper vent tubes from the carburetor I've routed up underneath the frame, and then under the tank they're looped down and back. And this should prevent water getting into the vent tubes. So you could do very deep river crossings with no issues. You'd have more of an issue with water getting into the airbox. And here you can see the amount of throttle cable slack I have. I've adjusted and I have 4mm now, which is right in the middle of the spec.